Hello, I'm Richard Fieldhouse and I've been a GP locum since 1995, working across Sussex, Surrey and Hampshire. My GP training gave me a wonderful experience of working in a supportive practice with a dedicated, motivated team who looked after me, who I knew I could turn to for support. I became familiar with many of the practice's systems and processes, all with the emphasis on me becoming a GP partner as soon as I qualified. I'm going to talk about my experience of starting out as a locum and how, in order for me to thrive, I would need to navigate the mindset of the practices that were hiring me, as well as adjust my own mindset. I will talk about the importance of avoiding the mindset of being a victim, of accepting that you're no longer an employee, but instead a self-employed independent contractor. The importance of preventing professional isolation and instead working as part of a thriving and highly respected team of locums. And getting away from the mindset that being a GP is all about continuity. I hadn't realised how professionally isolated GPs could be until I started working as a GP locum. My training had not prepared me to work in struggling, under-resourced practices that were at the opposite end of the spectrum to training practices. Induction into each different practice's highly individual, practice-specific ways of working was not at all at the level that I needed to safely or effectively perform there. And I had no idea how to set my terms and conditions, book sessions or invoice them, and discovered that there wasn't even an NHS pension scheme for locums. And when I needed support, there was no one to turn to. So I decided to set up a national community for GP locums to support each other, and very quickly mobilised 15 other locums from across the country to set up the National Association of Sessional GPs. The first thing we did was write a how-to manual on everything a locum needs to hit the ground running, which continues to be a free download from our website. Then we successfully lobbied the BMA and the government to win pension rights for locums. We created LocumDeck, a highly sophisticated national online locum management platform so that practices and locums can simply and instantly book sessions, send invoices, track payments, e-sign paperless pension forms and much more. We won a national award for developing a standardised practice information pack to make locum induction much easier. After 5 years, we'd achieved almost all we had set out to do, but had not yet been able to resolve the professional isolation that causes so many GP locums to struggle. So in 2002, we came up with a GP locum chambers model as a way for locums to thrive as part of a local team. So let's explore the 4 areas where we must embrace a new mindset for GP locums. Even today, GP training is focused on the expectation that we'll take up a GP partnership post. We experience the importance of control and responsibility we need to run a practice and the importance of establishing systems and processes for good patient management. But when we are working as locums, we work in many different practices where we have little or no control, but with the same degree of clinical responsibility for each patient we see. It's not unusual to work in a practice that hasn't had the capacity to implement robust systems and processes like a training practice. So as a GP locum, we can regularly find ourselves in a position of enforced underperformance, amid complexity and sometimes even amid chaos, over which we have no influence. Some practices take a proactive approach to obtaining GP cover. Perhaps one of the regular GPs is going off on holiday or for study leave, and so the practice plans ahead to maintain continuity of service. Whereas some practices are just too busy or under-resourced to plan ahead. So when they are looking for GP cover, they may have suffered a GP shortage for months, if not years, perhaps with a colleague being unwell for some time before, reporting in sick. In some cases, a locum might even cover a doctor who's recently been suspended. In all of these situations, you are unlikely to know this background. If you're fortunate, you'll soon realise you're in this vulnerable situation. If not, you'll just carry on oblivious to any looming risk. Every GP practice is a highly complex, fast-moving, high-stakes, unique environment that changes daily. No two practices do the same thing in the same way, so never assume the way you managed a patient in one practice this morning will be the same for a different practice this afternoon. More on behavioural economics later. In the TV series Band of Brothers, Easy Company, a parachute rifle company in the United States Army that played an integral part in the liberation of Europe from the Nazis, lands in a battlefield in the middle of the night. Explosions and flashing lights are everywhere, and injured comrades lie all around. A fellow soldier approaches Major Winters and says, "Looks like you guys are going to be surrounded. To which Major Dick Winters says, well, we're paratroopers, Lieutenant, we're supposed to be surrounded. As locums, we can often feel surrounded by systems and processes that are not only beyond our control, but often unknown. Anxious patients may have waited for ages to see a GP, and local resources may not be in place. As locums working in struggling practices, we are actually empowered with the opportunity to really help these practices and their disadvantaged communities who would have struggled even more without us being there that day. In these practices, patients so often ask us if they can see us again and be their new usual GP. It's heartbreaking to say no, but it reveals that we have made an impact. And with the sort of support that a GP locum chambers can provide, we can also help spread best practice to our colleagues. More on that later. It's a tough job and one that can easily be undervalued, but it's vital to adjust our collective mindset to the importance of GP locums and respect that working as a GP locum is a positive career choice. Another mindset to adapt to is to let go of the behaviour that we are an employee, where we no longer receive automatic pay or have PAYE and national insurance automatically deducted, no longer automatic pension contributions and no paid holiday, parenting or sick leave. Instead, as a self-employed independent contractor, this is now all on us. Instead, as locums, we're now entirely responsible for our own livelihoods. We need to take control of everything that a typical local business would do, because that's what we now are. From sales and marketing to finance and accounts, we need to think like a business. After all, we're all 3 months' pay away from destitution. When it comes to getting work, your CV is your trade ambassador. Until the practice has met you, it's going to be their first impression of you, and simple mistakes could make a practice think twice about engaging you. NASGP membership includes a free CV generator that helps you create a simple and clear CV. We hear from practice managers that if they spot any grammatical errors or spelling mistakes, or the CV is too long, they think twice about engaging that locum. So we highly recommend you get someone to check it for you. Aunties are good at this. They love you, but aren't afraid of pointing out your mistakes. If you haven't got an auntie, borrow a friend's. Your NHS email address looks good on your CV, as owning one carries its own level of assurance. It gives an extra level of confidence to the practice manager, making it possible for them to communicate patient-identified information with you should they need to, and helps them set you up on NHS systems. As a self-employed GP locum, you must register as self-employed with HMRC and complete an annual tax return. These can be time-consuming, and you're at risk of tax audit or investigation if HMRC thinks you've made a mistake. So not only is it worth using an accountant to check and submit your accounts, but make sure you use a specialist medical accountant who understands the nuances of working as a locum, NHS pensions and VAT for medical services. And financial advisors who understand how GPs work are in a better position to help with mortgages and long-term income protection. Any regular small business will have an insurance policy in place should it be unable to trade, and still pay staff in the event of fire and flood. So as a locum, if you put your back out in your next Zumba class, you need to have a policy in place so that you can get sick leave. NASGP works with an insurance provider with a policy specifically for GP locums. Use specialist GP locum software. NASGP members have full free access to Locum Deck, which has been built from the ground up by GP locums and is updated every 2 weeks and used by over 2,500 practices. Whatever software you use, make sure it tracks all booking information. It's all too common to turn up to a session and the practice can't find any record of the booking. And over the year you'll generate loads of financial data that you'll need for your accountant, so it should have a bookkeeping function built in. A good set of terms and conditions will protect you from all sorts of sticky situations. Good software includes a set of pick and choose terms for you to adapt to how you want to work. Falling foul of IR35, short notice cancellations, practices trying to avoid paying pensions and fluid session definitions are all common pitfalls that every locum can easily avoid with a good set of T's and C's. Locums can often find it hard to adjust to the mindset of being a locum. In simple terms, in line with any other business or freelance contractor, from plumbers through to accountants through to supermarket chains, indeed any business, it's the business or freelance contractor that sets the rate, not the customer. So a practice setting a locum's rate would be no different to a shopper setting the rate for what they pay for a loaf of bread or what someone will pay their accountant or plumber. That's why when we built Locum Deck, we made sure that it's the locum that sets their rate, not the customer. Having a good locum IT system improves efficiency, reduces mistakes and helps your locum business remain resilient, leaving you more time, energy and confidence to do the actual work of supporting practices, their patients and making a career out of being the best GP you can be. Just a quick example of what's not a professional tool for arranging highly complex locum work: WhatsApp. It puts you, the recipient, on the back foot with little or no protection and can leave locums very vulnerable. WhatsApp may be useful for non-professional transactions, but as a GP locum you are not a transaction or a commodity, you are a professional. So don't let yourself be commoditised by entrusting your professionalism to a consumer app. So as you set out as a GP locum, imagine yourself donning an invisible exoskeleton, partly as protection against threats to your livelihood, partly as a precision tool to help you get the most out of your career, and partly to make you aware of any traps or pitfalls that could lead to enforced underperformance. Another fundamental change of mindset is, as a GP locum, not accepting that you have to remain professionally isolated. In 2002, NASGP developed its GP locum chambers model, and we have a separate video to help explain it, with a link to it in this video's description. In a nutshell, any local town can accommodate multiple groups of up to 15 GP locums who all share an identity, together pooling the professional resources they need to fully support themselves and local practices. Once established, word of mouth soon leads to GPs moving to the area, with newly qualified GPs staying in the area longer and retired GPs staying on to help local practices. There are 5 simple key ingredients that together have an impact greater than the sum of their parts. Firstly, by sharing knowledge and information about local clinical pathways so that the Chambers members are better integrated into the structures and processes of the local healthcare economy. Secondly, by sharing highly trained Chambers managers who deal with any admin and management issues so that you can focus on seeing patients and supporting practices. They're great at supporting practice managers too, and are highly skilled at developing rapport with practices so that the Chambers locums are always foremost on practices' minds when cover is needed. Thirdly, by sharing peer support. Social events such as Christmas parties and family barbecues help locums get to know each other, creating friendships and the all-important psychological safety. So then, when meeting up in your monthly chamber clinical governance meetings, you're with people you know, that you trust and know won't judge you. So if you're feeling professionally vulnerable, such as after a complaint, you're with genuine friends and colleagues who can support you. Fourthly, by sharing constructive feedback to practices. As an individual GP locum, it can be pretty tricky to air your concerns to a practice without sounding critical and could seriously jeopardise your chances of working there again. But as a Chambers, we collect your feedback anonymously, along with your colleagues, and hand it on to the practice in a constructive and formative way. So that lastly, all the above activity builds a reputation for the Chambers members that goes way beyond the practices you work in, creating career opportunities and solidifying the role of working as a GP locum as a positive career choice. This last section is all about how I think general practice needs to replace its collective mindset from being predominantly about continuity. Continuity is the one value we all hold ourselves up to in general practice, almost to the exclusion of all other values. We claim it's our unique selling point. We've even gone out of our way to prove its efficacy and use it to justify our place in the NHS. So much so that we sometimes weaponise it against the work locums do. How many of us locums get asked when we're going to get a proper job, or even refer to ourselves as just a locum? A few years ago, the King's Fund took an in-depth look at continuity of care. They pointed out that continuity is partly about that traditional cradle-to-grave care that only can be given when seeing the patient time and time again, but also about the seamless continuation of the patient's management, which of course relies far more on excellent record keeping and far less upon whether you've actually met the patient before. The King's Fund also highlighted a degree of what's known as confirmation bias, where we've gone out of our way to confirm something without having adequately explored confounding factors. They suggested that more research was needed, for example, where the GP sees the same person so often that over-familiarity starts to cloud our judgment, leading to complacency, contempt and collusion. or where the patient then becomes dependent upon us with all the inherent problems we are seeing so much of in general practice at the moment. All of which can make us feel bad about ourselves and our career choice at a time when we can't afford to be losing more GPs. Not only are we neglecting to explore these downsides, I also believe that by taking continuity of care for granted, we're missing opportunities where we could be doing continuity better. For example, when seeing a patient we've never met before and has a usual GP, it's so easy to forget the significance of their usual GP because they're not here. But in fact, we should factor them in as if they're in the room with us. If the patient's illness is stable or even improving and management is all going to plan, it's all too easy to perform a few simple but important rituals, then wish the patient a good day. Whereas this could have been an excellent opportunity to reiterate the superb care to date and stress the importance of future reviews by the GP they already know and who knows them. But if the patient's illness is progressing or the management hasn't gone to plan, then naturally, as the locum, you're in a great position to do something about it. As locums, our different perspectives, experiences, knowledge, backgrounds and approach can all leave the patient with an entirely different experience, one they might even prefer. And it's so easy in this situation to be distracted when the patient then asks us if we can be their new GP. But what's actually happened here is that we've inadvertently disrupted that significant relationship with the usual GP. Rather than taking this for granted, we again should be reiterating the superb care to date, the pernicious nature of disease, and stress the importance of future reviews by someone they know. A really quick win for any GP to build rapid rapport with the patient, one to get the consultation off from 0 to 60 in 5 seconds, is to print off and laminate a pile of GP patient profiles. Anyone using NASGP's CV generator also gets emailed their own personalised template, which gives a very patient-friendly summary of your career as a GP, giving the patient confidence, especially after a receptionist has told the patient that there aren't any GPs in today, just a locum. And of course, there are plenty of other ways to value our work as GPs. For example, valuing the rich diversity of our profession by being able to approach patient care from different perspectives. Jakob von Uexküll was a German biologist who first described the Umwelt, which is the world according to the animal that perceives it. In the case of a tick, its world is made up entirely of a combination of vibration and the chemical gradient of sweat. That of a bat would include its use of echolocation, and for a dog probably largely of smell. For us humans, our worlds are derived largely from vision. Although even in the grander scheme of things, our eyes are only capable of seeing less than 1,000th of the visible spectrum. So putting all the perspectives of all animals together, we then arrive at the Umgebung, the world as it actually is, very different to how an individual perceives it. So with this in mind, when it comes to our patients, we're all going to have different and multiple perspectives. Some GPs have a deep, in-depth knowledge of one place, having worked there all their career, and this can bring a rich, invaluable insight into patients who have also been there all their life and local health services. But in contrast, there are GPs who work across wide areas, across a diverse range of communities and cultures, in all sorts of varied and different healthcare settings, seeing patients who have also lived and worked in all sorts of different areas too. There's even been some research into how multi-perspective can contribute to diagnosis, suggesting that certain types of cancer are diagnosed quicker if the patient sees different GPs. And another way to value our work as GPs is our ability to provide access to primary care where, had it not been for our flexibility and agility to support struggling or under-resourced practices, the patients may not have had seen a GP for a long time. Working in practices like this can be highly stressful, and providing continuity in these environments can be exceptionally difficult, which is why it's so galling when as a profession we doggedly hold on to continuity of care as a stick by which we measure ourselves against, where in reality it's only largely possible in thriving, well-resourced practices. Some GPs derive a deep sense of purpose from other ways of working as a GP, such as taking a very holistic approach to each patient rather than focusing mainly on their illness, or perhaps proactively incorporating a prevention and wellness approach. But if we as a profession are going to choose a sense of purpose that we can all subscribe to, I would like to suggest one that's not exclusive, but instead modern and evidence-based, and very much plays to our strengths and unique selling points as GPs. The Nobel Prize for Medicine has been going for 100 years, and in each year a prize given for an innovation that our secondary and tertiary care colleagues adapt, leading to continuous modernisation of healthcare. But in primary care we haven't really had the same opportunities, or have we? Over the last 20 years or so, there's been a veritable explosion in the field of behavioural economics, with researchers such as Daniel Kahneman and Richard Thaler winning Nobel Prizes in this discipline. They and many others have helped us to understand how and why people behave the way they do in the real world, illustrating the common errors, heuristics and assumptions people make, the subconscious biases we have, and how people's behaviour is often far less rational than we expect it to be. Over 100 of these errors and heuristics have been described, with many of them leaping out of the page, ready to be applied and widely adapted to general practice. For example, Ellen Langer used to hide in a busy library by the photocopy with a big pile of notes. When a long queue formed, she'd jump in front and say, "Hey, can you let me in front, please?" Most of the time, her request was refused. She then repeated the experiment with one minor adjustment, saying, "Hey, can you let me in front, please? Because I have a pile of notes." This behaviour radically changed the outcome and in most cases was let in, significantly improving her outcome and impeding that of everyone else in the queue. Casually justifying a request with a frankly irrelevant reason yields results. As GPs, how often do patients ask us for some diazepam because they're flying off somewhere, or recommend a course of treatment because it'll make them feel better? What impact is this heuristic having on us as clinicians, and if so, what are we doing about it? The sunk cost fallacy is where, the more we invest in something emotionally, financially or over time, the less likely we are to change our minds when faced with compelling information that suggests we are making the wrong choice. For example, we want to buy a house. We've spent £2,000 on a survey, made an offer and shown our family around. The next day, a similar house next door goes on the market. It's 20 grand cheaper, bigger garden, recent upgrade, no chain. But because of the effort we've already made, we're less likely to change our minds when faced with this much better choice. And research shows that the more postgraduate qualifications we have after our name, we're even less likely to change our minds. As GPs, how often do we go down a therapeutic pathway, various referrals and investigations, only to think, "Ooh, this could be neurological rather than gynecological. Nah, I've gone so far already, just made another referral, I'll carry on down this route for now." Here's one that the King's Fund should see. The more we know of a person's history, the more we stick to that history. This suggests that complacency is indeed inherent within continuity of relationship. So perhaps we should be proactively placing guards against this, such as not seeing the same patient more than a certain number of times in succession. Our brains love to see patterns, as it helps us see sense in the world. So this heuristic explains why we can prematurely jump to conclusions, even if there's the faintest hint of a pattern emerging. Confirmation bias is similar, but where we take an even more active role in determining an outcome that we subconsciously, or not so subconsciously, want to occur. A possible antidote to these two is the overconfidence effect, where research suggests that when we're left to our own devices, as it's so often the case as GPs, we are more likely to be overly confident in our decision making. So in general practice, by factoring in a more team-based approach to diagnosis and management, perhaps selecting certain patients or diagnosis for case discussion, or who knows, even patients seeing more than one GP, could go a long way to reducing several subconscious biases. Everyone has different personal and professional values, so it's important that as a profession our shared values are inclusive and accessible to all. Otherwise, whether consciously or subconsciously, GPs will continue to disengage from the workforce. We need shared values that will not set us up to fail, but set us up to succeed for our own sakes and for our patients. Thank you for watching this video. I have spent my entire career helping GPs to make the absolute best out of their time when working as a locum. And my experience has always been that locums who have an open-minded, can-do approach to make the most of every session they perform, every practice they visit and every patient they see get the most fulfilment, and are then equipped to take on other challenges open to them, whether that's a GP partnership, a leadership role or anything else to complement their portfolio career. Doctors in their GP training receive completely free NASGP membership, which we extend for a further 3 months when they qualify. For all other GPs, membership is also free for the first 3 months, then £12 per month. Our website includes thousands of articles and you'll receive a short weekly email news digest. And you can subscribe to our YouTube channel now. This video's description has all the links you'll need.